We're going to look at how you can convert the data in a table to means and standard deviations and use that to create an appropriate graph. Here we have the temperature graphed against time. The first thing we need to calculate is the mean. In this, we put the cursor in here and press equals. We want to calculate the mean. In this case, using the Excel functions, we need average. We highlight only the data that we want to calculate the mean of. This does not include temperature. And it's calculated. If I so wished, I could do the same for each of the other temperatures, but it's much easier to grab this by the little green square and drag it down. And look at that, all of them calculated quickly. Standard deviations, which you'll need to produce error bars on your graphs, which shows the range of the data, an indication of how reliable your data is. Again, you press equals, STDEV, make sure it's the STDEV option that you take, and again, highlight the data that you want to find the standard deviation of. Notice it is the data that has been recorded and does not include the mean, and again, press enter. You can again calculate all of the standard deviations for the data that you've collected by simply dragging down. This table can be used to produce a graph. However, it's reasonably complicated. Much easier to create a new table for your temperature and your mean time. This doesn't require you re-inputting the data. Simply press equals, click on temperature, press enter. I can again bring this down and I've got my data. I repeat this for mean, and again bring it down for mean. Do note that the number of decimals is not what I want, so I want to change this by using this increase decrease function over here, and I want 2 decimals because all of my recorded data, my measured data, has 2 decimals. We'll also do this for standard deviation. Click on equal standard deviation, press enter, drag it down, highlight the numbers and reduce the number of decimals to 2 as we have here. Now I want to produce a graph. I highlight the numbers for temperature and the mean time. I graph these. I want to go to insert. I want to choose graph, and the graph I want is scatter with lines and markers. Again, it is scatter with straight lines and markers. And there's my graph. I want to add error bars. I'm going to use my standard deviation to do that. Click on any data point and all data points are highlighted. Add chart element and choose more error bars options. Not standard deviation, choose more error bar options. You ignore all of these and you go for custom. Not standard deviations, not standard error. You want to specify values, and that is using the calculated standard deviations from your data. I've just clicked on specify value, and for the positive values I click here and then I highlight the calculated standard deviations and press enter. I repeat the same procedure for the negative standard deviations and I click OK, and I now have error bars on my graph. However, there are also X error bars. I need to delete these. Before I put chart titles and labels on, I want to ensure that this looks as much like graph paper as possible. So I choose primary minor horizontal grid lines and primary minor vertical grid lines. And now my data looks like a nice graph. Sorry, I didn't mean to stretch that so far across. That is better. I now need to put a chart title on, relatively simple, and it should relate to what has been measured. In this case, the effect of time, the effect of temperature. As you can see, I need to learn to type. I now want to put on axes titles. The temperature degrees Celsius should be my independent variable and should be on the x-axis. I have just copied temperature and the unit, and I'm going to use that here. I need to again go to my graph, click on my graph. I want to look at chart design, add chart element, and go to axes title, primary horizontal. I'm going to highlight this, copy paste, and there is my temperature degrees Celsius. I'm going to repeat this procedure for the y-axis, in this case time, with the unit and the precision of the instrument that was included. Again, I need to go to click on the graph. I need to click chart design, add graph element, axes titles, and it's the primary vertical axis. Again, click and paste. I want to put here, it's actually mean time, because this is the calculated mean. This is now a pretty good graph. However, some things I need to be consistent with. If you note here, I have no decimal places for my temperatures, and that's what I have going along here, and that is what I want to keep. But with my recorded data, my mean and my standard deviation, these are to 2 decimal places, so I need to change this axis to 2 decimal places. Highlight it, you format your axis, you go down to number. You don't want general, you want number. And in this case, you want 2 decimal places. You may want 1, and that would change accordingly. However, in this case, I want 2. So that is my data there. And that gives you a graph which makes sense. Before copying and pasting this into Word or into some other format, it makes sense to check, does the data make sense? 2.28 is the mean time for the temperature of 15. And I can see that that happens to be correct because I can see 2.28. The same with the temperature of 44. This is just below 45, so this indeed makes sense. And the looking at the standard deviation error bar, this is 44 plus 6. Sorry, I'm wrong. It is 38.6. 38 plus 6 brings you up to around 45. The error bar makes sense. This is the type of graph that you require.